One, two, three, four.
Hey everyone, it's Ivan with KidBadger.com here today to share a story from my past. If you were capable of creating memories at that point in your life, September 11th, 2001, it's forever etched in your memory. For all intents and purposes, it's an analog to previous generations' JFK assassination. You know where you were, who you were with, what you were doing when all those events transpired. This is my story of where I was, who I was with, what I was doing. September 2001, found myself in Northwest Australia, a little place called Darwin. I was in the Marine Corps at the time, Bravo Company 11. We were on float, Westpac. We'd stopped off for our first kind of major training exercise, doing a bunch of live fire stuff. We'd finished up a week or so training, went back to ship, got cleaned up, went out in town on Liberty. Everyone's going to bars, doing all that stuff. I was there with a couple friends, Tony Aspera, a couple guys from his platoon, I think Knox and Coleman maybe, and we were in this bar called Nirvana. We're sitting there, I don't remember, probably, 10, 11 o'clock at night. We were all hanging out, everyone's drinking, and this guy comes up to our table. Crazy, like punker hairstyle, like everything jagged, big points, multicolored, and he's like, "Hey, you guys are with the ship, right? You guys are Marines here in town?" Obviously were. Everyone had high and stupid haircuts, but he's like, "Hey, did you guys hear? Like, these planes just flew into the World Trade Center." And so we're looking at him. And so the guys are kind of giving like, "Yeah, right," like jiving him and stuff. And he's like, "No, like he's genuinely trying to convince us, but we're all early 20s assholes." And everyone's like, "Yeah," and not to mention, like, in fairness, like, it's kind of a big story to swallow. He's like, "Yeah, blah, 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 blah. This just happened. Like, I swear, mates, planes just flew in there, and I think one flew into the Pentagon," on and on. He was trying to convince us. We're all sitting at this table. So then 23-year-old asshole version of myself, of course, I'm like, "Hey, here's the deal, man. Wait, dramatic pause, get it quiet." And I'm like, "I'm having a really hard time believing your story with your hair like that." And of course, all my friends are busting up. And at that point, that's the last straw. Dude's exasperated. It's just like, fuck. Like, he ends up walking away. And so we're all sitting at the table after that, just like, that was pretty weird, like laughing, joking, whatever. But being about that time that it was, I was like, you know what? My mom should probably be getting to work. Being the good son that I was, I'm like, you know what? I'll go give my mom a call. So go out front, there's a payphone there. Pick it up, try calling, all the lines are busy. That on its face isn't necessarily indicative of planes crashing into a building on the other side of the world, but really weird. And I was like, okay, like, it's pretty weird. Right across the street was this all night, like 24-hour laundromat. Run over there, there was someone in there. Didn't want to ask like a leading question, but I was like, "Hey, have you heard any news or anything like that lately?" And they're like, "You mean about those planes crashing in the World Trade Center?" At that point, it's like, shit. So I come out, I'm waiting, this cab's coming, run back across the street, back in Nirvana. And cab's like, "Brrr." He's like, "Hey, you with the ship? Hop in, I'll give you a ride back. Everyone's getting called back to the ship." And I was like, "Hey, listen, like, thank you. My friends are inside. We're gonna be a little bit, like, I'll get another cab. Thanks though, man." And so he takes off. Run across the street, go back in, tell my buddies what happened, what I had just heard. And of course now, who's the asshole now, right? So I end up going, apologizing profusely to this dude. I'm just like, "Hey, I'm really sorry." And it's something that struck home for him as well. He actually had a sister in New York. Fortunately, she was fine. She was in New York City, but she was okay and she was fine. Keep in mind, this is 2001. Not everyone has a cell phone. Calling internationally is incredibly expensive, and after I had treated this person in that way, he was actually nice enough to let me use his phone, which was huge. All the landlines were blocked and gave me the opportunity to actually call home. I was able to speak with my mother over on the West Coast her morning and reassure I was okay. I don't know what's going on, don't know where we're going, but I'm safe, and put her mind at ease. And from there, we ended up basically going out of that bar. We got a cab back to our hotel. One or two of the guys I was with kind of lost their mind, like destroyed the mini bar, got blitzed, like tearing stuff apart. All the while, the TV's just replaying the planes crashing in the World Trade Center. And I don't know who paid the security deposit on that hotel room, but we got down to the lobby, got everyone like out of there into a cab, and it was surreal driving back through town. All these cabs, all these service members pouring out of the bars, kissing, saying their goodbyes to these girls they had met like a couple hours earlier. And finally got back to the ship, USS Dubuque, and I still think to this day, logistically, it's amazing. Like literally everyone in town back on ship, cut out of there, raised anchor, cut out, 06 the next morning. Leaving Darwin, we cut straight over to East Timor, delivered some humanitarian aid stuff that was scheduled, and then straight to the Arabian Sea and cut some grid squares for a little while, watched all the Tomahawk missiles get launched, kind of kicking the whole thing off. Then we ended up in Pakistan, securing an airfield, and don't remember how long we were there. It's all the holidays basically create the benchmarks. We were there for Halloween and back on ship for I think maybe a week, and had like the worst Thanksgiving meal of my life, and then turned around and went to Afghanistan, and we were there for I think maybe a month or so. We were there for Christmas and New Year's, and kind of first conventional forces down toehold southern Afghanistan, a place called Camp Rhino. It was an airfield in the middle of nowhere. Pretty much looked like a moonscape around this thing. And then eventually back to ship and eventually back home. But it was a really weird time, that transition, going from peacetime Marine Corps to wartime Marine Corps, and all those things that were fine as far as being garrison Marines that were bullshit, like when the flag went up, having my TO squad, being a squad leader of 12 men and actually having 8, and on the books having 3 saws, and I had 1 that functioned intermittently. I don't know, stuff like that. And then, I don't know, all of it too just kind of surreal, and not going through boot camp, like before bed, at chow, whenever, like everyone chanting, pray for war, and I don't know. I think there's enough war for everyone today.
I hold the cold steel on my rifle as I dream of foreign lands. And I promise myself I will cherish every moment I can.